Great, welcome everyone. So why don't we go ahead and get started? And I know many of you. I'm Rob Grimes, the CEO of the IFBTA, and I'm actually really glad to see many people uh, on this call that I haven't seen in quite a while. So this is great. Am I muted? You can hear me, right? Okay, people are shaking their head. Great. So can you hear me now? Uh, so this is great. This is actually a virtual chapter meeting. However, we're taking a little bit of a different path for the first few meetings of the year over the next few weeks, where we're actually introducing our members to the board and also hearing from our board in an open discussion with you about what's important to them, as well as what do they see in the industry. But at the end of the day, the IFBTA is about sharing information amongst ourselves, so we will have an open mic as well. But before we get started, a few housekeeping items. So first, our menu for today, housekeeping. I'm going to give you a quick update. We'll consider this something of an annual meeting. We'll have our board member presentation, open discussion, open mic, and then we will conclude and wrap up. So the housekeeping. You can go ahead and submit your questions via the chat feature. What I would suggest that you do is, there are two ways to do this. You can submit a comment, and you certainly can talk amongst yourselves, but it would be to everyone. So if you have a specific question, it would be best if you submit that directly to IFBTA in the chat and not everyone, so that we can go ahead and funnel those and sort them so that we can get to them as well. And we'll add them in, so feel free to do that. But you're also welcome to chat with each other during this. If you have a question that you want to ask one of our speakers, go ahead and specify it. Otherwise, we'll make that choice or ask everyone. And as always, we would ask you to stay away from any kind of questions regarding sales, pricing, political discussions, or disparaging remarks, but compliments are fine. Attendees will be muted during the live session, but like in any chapter meeting, and unlike some of the webinars we do, when we go to open mic, the mics and your cameras are completely open, and so we should have discussion amongst ourselves. And I know there's some great people on this call, so I'm sure it'll be a lively discussion. So let me give you a little bit of an update. And 2020 was obviously a very interesting year for our industry, and it was an interesting year for the IFBTA, but we held our own. We maintained our 10 chapters that we have, and we actually added a virtual chapter as well during that period of time. And we're going to continue that. We had 23 virtual and an in-person meetings, so we did have meetings in the first quarter, and then we did virtual meetings, chapter meetings. We did participate in some events, NRF that started the year in January, the International Food Service Expo of New York, and MERTEC. And as I was telling some people earlier, the very last flight I took was a year ago today on my way back from MERTEC. And that was in between the New York show, which was also in March. We did a lot of industry support and representation. Not everything is done as the IFBTA. Many times we support other groups as well. We actually participated in over 52 webinars over the last year, and many of them were global. We participated in the Singapore Hospitality Show, which was virtual. We participated in Japan. We did something for the American Embassy for franchisees in Russia. And then, of course, we did things with different groups in the United States, other trade shows, other associations, and people that wanted us to provide our expertise and bring our members together. We also formed alliances and partnerships. Specifically the New York State Restaurant Association, which was in fact announced, and it's in a newsletter. It came out this week, but we did it at the end of the year. It started at the New York show a year ago. We participated with the National Restaurant Association in gatherings, joint gatherings and sessions with them, the Retail Federation, and then we announced a partnership to bring the IFBTA and technology education and conferences to some trade shows, which unfortunately were canceled this year, but went virtual, but will be around next year. And then we expanded our board. I'll introduce them to you in a minute. And then we continued our industry participation through expanding the certification program. But an interesting factoid for me was that we had over 22,000 people that participated in the various things we did this past year. Our 2021 outlook and initiatives are very clear, and I think we're looking pretty good. We will expand our chapters both regionally as well as virtually. You should expect a lot of new alliances with state restaurant associations and other associations, as well as events and media. And we will have increased presence because we do expect the New York, California, and restaurant and Florida restaurant shows to take place this year. And I'll give you those dates later. But we will have presence at those, plus the normal things that we do. We also intend to enhance the certification program this year to add new modules and upgrade it. We will continue to support industry education through the universities, and we've added new staff, which you'll see some announcements in the next few weeks. And of course, the number one thing is increased participation and engagement with our members, whether in person or otherwise. So our IFBTA board, which we put out a press release at the end of the year, was expanded. We had a few people who retired from the board who've been with us actually since the very beginning. But you can see and hear a very wide range of board members, including our international board member from Nando's. But you can see each industry segment here, from hotels to multi-unit to fine dining, independents, the QSR. We also added the on-site segment through HMS Host. So we have a very diverse board. And then, of course, we have very diverse chapter leaders as well. So enough about that. So today, we've split up our board members into different groups. So they each have different perspectives, and we've tried to mix and match, if you will. And so today, what I'd like to do is ask each one of our board members to introduce themselves, their company, and just a couple of the priorities that they have for the year. And then we're just going to go ahead and start a discussion. So Sarah, maybe we would start with you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, and welcome everyone. It's certainly an honor to be a member of this board. As stated earlier, I'm Sarah Naqvi. I am the Chief Information Officer and Executive Vice President for HMS Host. HMS Host is an industry leader and expert in food and beverage operations for our travel venues. We have a portfolio of hundreds of brands, which comprises of local, specialty, national, as well as proprietary brands within our portfolio. We are considered a part of Autogrill Group. It's an Italian-based food and beverage service provider for travelers, and our operations are in about 31 countries all over the world. As we look at the pandemic and look at our priorities, we consider ourselves as a leader in travel dining, and we will continue to lead as the industry emerges from the pandemic. We are working with our business partners to prepare for the travel road for recovery. Our organization is really focused on, first of all, safety, right? Really ensuring that it is a safe environment, not just for our travelers, for our guests, for our employees, for everybody that we interact with. So that's the primary focus. The other area where we are focusing is to really give our customers choices. Today's consumer looks for contactless experience, and in the past, if you were to reflect, it was a hybrid of needing that personal experience versus a contactless experience. So as we look at the new norm, our focus has been to really prepare for that and use technology as an enabler for business transformation. I'm excited to be here, and I'm excited to share my views on where I think the industry is going. So thank you again for the opportunity.
Great, thank you. And Eugene, do you want to go next?
Sure. My name is Eugene Yee. I'm with the Gibson's Restaurant Group. We are 13 locations throughout the Chicagoland area, and we have a few throughout the outlying areas in Florida and Philadelphia. But for the most part, I think most of our initiatives currently are just trying to recover from the pandemic and reevaluate our current systems. I think what we found, being in the fine dining space, we were very unprepared to make that pivot in terms of the changes to, the closures, the difficulties and the challenges that everyone faced. So, that really opened our eyes to a lot of stopgaps which we have that prevented us from being able to pivot as quickly. So I think the company is working to try and get more agile and trying to basically pull everything together and reevaluate systems we have and implement some of those currently. At the same time, we kind of have some growth coming. We have a new location that we have a partnership with the Jose Andres Group. So I think one of the biggest things is to try and open up that new location as well as another new location in 2021.
Great. And Zarek?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Zarek Pearson. I'm the Vice President of IT for Five Guys Enterprises. We are Burger and Fry concept in roughly 22 countries, about 1,500 units. I'm thrilled to be here today to speak to all involved. about the industry, where it's headed and where we're headed. From a focus standpoint, it's really on I think it mirrors my two colleagues, right, and their organization's priorities. The safety of our customers, the safety of our employees, as things start to reopen and the world has shifted, right? What's our new normal going to look like? So we are trying to pivot across the board to be ready for that. We are doing a bit of digital transformation across the organization as well, as we streamline things and just start to reevaluate how we run as a business, and again, how our new normal is going to look post-COVID. And then the customer journey. We are really trying to evaluate the customer journey and where we can remove friction points wherever possible as we grow internationally. Again, thrilled to be here. Thanks, Rob.
Great. Well, listen, we obviously have a very diverse group today, and we've heard a number of keywords. Now, I feel like we should be playing a drinking game here, which means either not saying the word pivot or new norm. But there are some keywords that have come up, but I'd like to start with maybe Sarah, you might lead us into this one. You know, it has been a challenging time for the industry. A lot of focus is on reopening, but what does it take to lead, coming out of this? What are the challenges for leadership? We need you on mic. There you go.
Right, to make sure that there wasn't any background noise. But a great question, right? So the first thing that we are doing is that we are not calling it reopening. The reason why we are not calling it reopening is because our norm has completely changed. It has shifted. It is, lopsided. We don't know. We will continue to define the new norm. So instead of calling, reopening, because reopening kind of leaves you with an impression that it means doing the same thing all over again that we used to do pre-pandemic, which is not going to be the case. As a result, we are calling it a growth strategy. How do we rebrand ourselves in the sense that reposition ourselves to meet the demands of the new consumer, and how do we position ourselves as the leader, as we've always been in this space. So with that said, it's going to be, at least from a purely technology standpoint, I expect us to be in this transition phase where it's going to start out with really using technology, especially consumer devices, to really engage when making dining choices and creating that contactless environment. And then that would for sure lead us into different programs that in the past has not been as easy for companies like ours to adopt. And to further elaborate, it could be loyalties, right? I mean, we are a hidden brand. We operate behind the brand, so people necessarily don't know HMS Host, but they know us through our brands. So as we enter into this contactless environment, as we enter into, enabling consumers to use their devices, does it give us those insights onto consumer behaviors? Does it give us, the knowledge that we need to really fine tune our operations to the new norm? Those are the insights that we've not had. Another important factor that's going to be really important for us to lead is going to be about data. I mean, we've talked about data for the longest time, but now you cannot survive without really leveraging the data, because it's going to require us to really fine tune our operations for a while until such time that we know exactly what the consumers need. The last thing that I would say is that role of IT leaders is changing. I mean, we cannot operate or should not operate. I mean, the transformation and the change of the role already started with the digital becoming, in our forefront. However, it's imperative now, CIOs' skill sets, technology readiness to really adapt to that new environment, all has been put to test. Overnight, we had to go to remote work. Overnight, we had to meet all of the technology needs of our companies while keeping it secure, and really demonstrating our leadership skills. So IT leaders are in the forefront, and all of the decisions that we had made in the past have been put to test. And now we need to shape that using, how we performed during the pandemic and shape our future. So I've got some additional thoughts on vendors, but hopefully that'll give you an idea as to where my thought process is as to how we're going to lead in 2021.
Well, you've certainly, first of all, opened the door on a number of interesting terms that are very positive, by the way. Growth strategy, certainly being one. Shifting the norm rather than the new norm. I thought that was sort of an interesting thing. And then some focuses on perhaps more respect for IT leadership or challenges on the IT leadership skills? Zarek, where do you find yourself, as far as the changes to leadership?
I mean, Five Guys as a brand, we've always had a seat at the table. They've been very inclusive of us and all the new initiatives, all the projects and things going globally. I think we were well positioned pre-pandemic to leverage some of the technologies needed to survive this, right? I think like many folks, we shifted in other areas. In other areas, we were very well prepared. From a leadership standpoint, we are quicker to sort of drive innovation and new thoughts, right? It's always been a very interactive relationship between operations, with them bringing us new ideas, us finding new ideas and looking for things where we can. We found ourselves very much having to shorten the testing cycle in trying new things and figuring out what will work and won't work. During the pandemic and presumably coming out of the pandemic as well. But we've been very happy with how things have run. In the industry as a whole, I get calls from folks in the IFBTA all the time. Everyone as a whole says that the business is far more engaged with IT now, more so than they've ever been. I think Sarah spoke to it, right? It's how much more of our revenue is coming from digital channels, right? Rather than being a cost center, IT is very much driving revenue and very much a part of all decisions around revenue now and moving forward. So, from a leadership standpoint, we have to take hold of that, engage it, and be thought leaders in how we can improve the business as a whole. Trying new ideas and being quick to say yes, this works, and also quick to say no, this doesn't. Let's try something else.
Great. So Eugen, I'm going to guess that you're probably part of a leadership team that you're involved in almost everything. That's not necessarily so segmented, and you don't probably have a big team, and you're also probably relying on others. So did the leadership style and the requirements of you change, as things took place, and how's that change going to stick? Where do you see the leadership going forward?
I think the organization as a whole started to embrace technology a little bit more so during this time. So, IT tends to shine out a little bit because of the needs. I mean, we lost a lot of bodies, and during that time, we had to have capabilities of people working from home communicate, and there was a lot of needs that were never looked at just from our industry stake to work in this type of environment. So with that stated, I mean, there was a lot of thought process and reflection on what we needed to do move forward. So yeah, technology wise, we had to buy a bunch of new stuff, either add in a lot of VPN connections for laptops, as well as devices and cameras, things that we never really needed within this organization. I think we're embracing technology more so. And I think from my perspective, the leadership comes as, we have to guide them in terms of the direction of what some of the larger companies are dealing with, whereas we don't really communicate in that fashion. You're still pick up the phone, try and place an order, or talk to another restaurant. You pick up the phone. We now have Google Chat and Hangouts and things where you can easily make connections without actually trying to get someone on the phone and quickly communicate. So, technology-wise, I foresee the hospitality space embracing it more so, especially during this challenge, especially even from the customer's perspective. They're seeing all these new nuances and new technology that is available, from online ordering on through to just communication. There's just so much available, and I see us taking a large part, exactly what you said, with a lot of the leadership communities. An interesting thing that just recently came up, and maybe we've been getting a lot of Google automated reservations. I don't know if any of you guys are in the reservation space, but a lot of that has been coming through, and it's very interesting how technology is being embraced by the consumer side of things, so that they're actually just entering in information, having AI do the work for you. And again, that type of new technology is hitting our industry, and we have to embrace it and understand what's to come, and hopefully we can take on that challenge and make new connections.
So here's the interesting thing I just got out of this. So by the way, the very last thing you said about the AI, I find is interesting, and we probably, as a matter of fact, I'm going to write it down because we probably should have a discussion about that. Also, maybe in the open mic. However, you said the word embrace tech a bunch of times. Now, to me, I translate embrace tech, meaning that perhaps operations, ownership may not have seen it as strategic as important before, but embrace tech also means they're willing to invest, put money into it. Is that a common theme across the board here, where he also, by the way, said his priorities changed? So I don't know if Sarah or Zarek, you want to comment on embrace tech, priorities changing, and perhaps, the allocation of budgets and things as we move into this.
Agree that embrace tech has come as a necessity rather than they had to learn how to, adapt to Microsoft meetings if they're going to collaborate remotely. They are, these were some of the mandates. How do you, ensure that you have the entire same experience, remotely as you have it in the office? So in essence, our customers have become more acclimated to technology. They had to adapt. They were forced to adapt. So I would have to completely agree that it's been as a result of the environment that they've been forced to operate under, that adopting technology, we're seeing high adoption and
I'd say the
recognition how
same.
important it is.
It was forced, right, Sarah?
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, Sarah, I thought you were done. My apologies. I'd say the same. Embracing technology, everyone's been forced to. If you wanted to dine out in certain places, you had to learn how QR codes worked on your camera, right? No matter what your age was. I think folks shifted quickly. I think we all embraced tech. I would say in some cases, and I've heard from folks, it hasn't always been the best tech, right? Because it was a trial by fire. Right? Who can do this the fastest? In many cases was the mantra. And now folks are going back and they're saying, hey, we did this with this company and it worked, but it wasn't the best experience. Now we're trying to improve it, right? So they're past the fire drill and now they're trying to drill in on what's the best experience or best product versus really just keeping the lights on. So yes, Rob, to that degree, priorities are very much.
But you also have something that our other two board members don't have, which are something called franchisees. Now Sarah gets to be the beneficiary of what Five Guys does, because I think there are some Five Guys in HMS host locations. I don't know whether there's Gibsons in HMS host locations, but Zarek, did embrace tech and investment and priority changes also help you with your franchisee community?
Of course. I mean, it's those folks are entrepreneurs and of themselves, right? So they're quick to embrace new ideas, and they very much push the brand in a very good way for trying things, right? My franchisees reach out all the time with forward articles or posts about what they've seen in different spaces and would this work for us and why or why not? And let's talk about it. Let's call these guys, or I've had a call with these guys. You should talk to them. So yes, I think our franchise community has always been quick to embrace new ideas, and rightly so. They help drive innovation for the brand, right? We listen to everyone and everything. So why not?
Great. So Zarek, I'm going to move over to you, Jim, but can you check your mic while we're doing that? We're getting you in and out there. Eugen, I'd like to know, you also talked about, you teed it up, you said the priorities shifted, and there are only so many priorities. There's only so much time, money, and resources to do anything. How did your priorities shift, and how, and what has shifted in the priority roadmap that a year ago and a week, let's say, wasn't on the roadmap that maybe this year?
Yeah, so I think the pandemic really opened our eyes to our abilities to make changes quickly. So, agile companies, you hear that in technology all the time. We're hospitality, we're not really that agile type of industry. So with that, we found a very slow process in terms of changes that could be made within the organization. A lot of heavy lifting, a lot of manual labor that we were doing. And we lost a lot of bodies, which then created those gaps that prevented us from being able to be, I want to say, pivot, right? To pivot quickly and efficiently. So with that stated, right now, I think our goal is to try and find ways to connect those two. And I think Zarek said it, right? Make it frictionless for our internal process as well as the customer perspective. From our perspective, technology and the fine dining space probably don't play so well. They do, but not as well as fast casual. And that's just my personal opinion on things. But from our internal perspective, I think as an organization, we find a lot of need where we're able to be more efficient currently with less bodies, just because we have technology to utilize some of the features and functionalities that we're putting in place. You know, APIs, just some automation, some ease of even spreadsheets, being able to use things collaboratively rather than, you know, sending emails and Excel documents back and forth. So, you know, it's just a whole overview of how we're embracing technology as an organization and trying to kind of pull everything together in step-by-step procedures so that everything makes sense and kind of make it more seamless as an organization versus kind of siloed how we had it before and everyone was doing their own thing. So now we're trying to work collaboratively more so than, you know, accounting does this and then HR does this, and then two never knew what was happening. So the left hand always tried to swing at the right hand to clap, and they were doing this consistently.
Well, at least you get them at least you get to have them in a central group and realizing how things connect, right?
That's correct. So yeah, that's the whole. I think our goal is to try and get more communication and utilize technology to embrace. And again, that collaboration is where we're at right now, to try and get everyone to work together so that we're closer to clapping like this as much as possible. We're still not there yet, but you know, that's where we want to be. So we were able to, you know, give applause and cheer when we get to end goal.
So Sarah, you said before, you were talking about how you never really closed, and you didn't, and so there's not a reopening, you know, that's going on. But your customer base, you know, you probably, of everybody on this call, have the most diverse customer and probably employee base as well, by the way. And I'm sort of wondering, with the changes in how they're approaching technology out there, how does that change an operation like yours with so many people passing through from many different places? Is it going to change the way you do business going forward?
Yes. Let me make sure. First of all, we did close. So I just want you to know that we had to close a number of our locations because the sales and the employments were just not there. What I meant with my earlier comment was when we are reopening, we are not calling it reopening, but a very thoughtful approach on how we are going to reopen and what we are going to make available to our customers. So as far as diversity of you know, consumers that we serve, it's always been the case. Yeah, you know, we are in every major airports around the globe, and we do conform to the demands of the customers from that standpoint. And that has been a focus of ours, is how do we really, pre-COVID, what we found that there were two sets of customers. One, who were very technology savvy, who wanted to use the technology and felt very comfortable with it. And then there were those that were kind of the hybrid, wanted some personalization, wanted to use some technology. When we look at that demographic data, when we look at, you know, these customer behaviors and try to study them more, we have concluded that it's the business traveler that seem to be more, has a stronger acumen for technology. They want their expense reports and everything digital. They want, you know, to pay with a digital wallet. They want all of that efficiency because of the type of traveler that they are. Leisure travelers on the other side, they, you know, when they're traveling with multiple family, you know, children and husband and wife, and now you're in a food court, there's 6 different stores, and I want to, you know, buy some from here, some from another, some from another. How do we meet the technology demand, and how do we make that experience a really good one for that type of a traveler? So it has really allowed us to evolve our technology footprint. Like multi-brand kiosk, for instance, is an offshoot as a result of us conforming to the needs of those families that are traveling with kids, don't want to go to 3 different locations, want to order it from one place, want to have one receipt and then pick up the food from different counters. So that's an example. Language has been a big one, really making, you know, each of our digital endpoints conform to different languages that our consumers speak has been another focus. from a payment standpoint, people are accustomed to really using very diverse type of payment options. That's what that they're used to, the PayPals of the world and mobile wallets and so forth. So we've tried to really create a very diverse portfolio, which allows customers to really give them exactly what we want. If you were to ask the same question to our CEO, Steve Johnson, he will say that we are a company first about the experience and food, and then about technology. Technology should
Did
be
some of
enabled.
those things change though, or get sped up because of what's happened over the last year? Because like business traveler expectations, they probably were using those tools to begin with, yet I could see how a multifunctional kiosk or multi-concept kiosk, when you're skinning down or where you're trying to consolidate operations, comes in very handy.
Mhm. So yes, it's absolutely changing. What we have done is for our kiosk now in a COVID era that they might not want to physically engage with the kiosk, yet we have this entire suite of hardware in our location. What do we do with it? How do we really move to that new environment, which is contactless? So now we have enabled all of our kiosks with QR codes. So this is again giving choices to our customers that says, if you don't want to touch the kiosk, hey, guess what? You've got a QR code option that you can then use and engage. As far as business travelers, we expect the behavior pattern of business travelers to change as we come out of this, and maybe a couple of years. It's allowed companies to take a step back and relook at business traveler. So we are continuing to study who's going to be the core of our business and what are the demands and what do we need to offer. So it's work in progress. I expect it to continue to change.
Hey, Zarek.
You're on
There
mute.
you are. Yep, you're muted. You're muted. There you go. Very good.
IT issues, my apologies.
Yeah, so was there a impact or some things that have changed for you in the priority basis, specific things?
Absolutely. Initially, it was really keeping the doors open and lights on, right, for everyone. I mean, it was very much a fire drill when COVID first hit. Now we are dialing in. Our priority is on the off-premise business and the customer journey, right, to really improve that experience in every way we can. I firmly believe that in the future, that customer experience will help drive repeat business, right? A bad experience, a bad digital experience, folks are not as likely to use your app or your product or your website or things again, right?
Mhm.
That's why Amazon has cornered the market where it has, because in 45 seconds, you can place an order and be out the door and almost anything be done with that transaction. I think that's coming for all of us as well.
Great. Sarah, you had mentioned a couple times about inclusion and diversity. Of course, not just the customer base, but also the staff base. And it would seem that of all the three companies on this call, you may face that more than some of them. What are there some specific things that have come out of this that help you to address inclusion and diversity within your workforce?
I would say that the food and beverage industry is pretty inclusive and pretty diverse. When we look at our travelers, our makeup of our employees represent the makeup of our travelers, which is very diverse. Where inclusion and diversity has become more prevalent and more of a discussion is in the field of IT. In the past, it has been difficult to really find talent which is diverse, which brings in different areas, because we've been very constrained to hire people on site in the regions that we operate in. Now, with remote work becoming more and more, acceptable as a standard of operation, we are hoping that we can make these options more available. We can expand our scope and reach out to other communities, reach out to different areas that we might find the workforce that can represent the same makeup at corporate or in IT as we have within our field operations. So a very active effort. And it's, even when I speak to my peers in the industry, it seems like that is the natural transformation that a lot of IT leaders are feeling. I mean, female leaders in IT industry are very limited. I mean, why is it? And then I started looking at the STEM programs as well. You're not only seeing a few leaders in the current environment today, but the graduate level of diverse talent that's pursuing technology discipline is also shrinking from the diversity standpoint. So there is a need for us to not only look at the current makeup, but to really play as leaders of the technology field, an influential role in driving interest in this field of a diverse pool early on, because that's the future. That's where we are heading, and then that's what we need to prepare for.
I would just point out one thing, though, that you want, while it's a challenge, is it not also an opportunity? Because before, people had to come into a physical place and do their work, and you're probably able now to disperse that workforce and therefore give more opportunity in the IT community than you could have before as well.
Absolutely, but it's a culture change, right? So at our corporate level, we have spent millions of dollars to create that engaging environment and a beautiful building.
There's nobody there to engage.
Cafeteria and a Starbucks and everything else, and now we are saying, well, do we really have to be in the office? So it's going to be a transitional phase. I think we like to believe that we are all okay with remote workforce, but it's going to take some time. And that's where we find ourselves, is really adapting to that new norm.
Right. So Eugen, you also brought it up. I think you brought it up a little bit different. I think you said that within your units, you lost the number of people, and I don't know if you ever get them back, but I've been to some of your restaurants, and service, on the higher end side is very key, in fine dining. What are the challenges that you're facing with the staff, and how are you using, your technology to boost it, not only for the short-term problem, but perhaps change how you do it longer term?
Yeah, on the operations side, I think, where we're hurting most is the bodies for the, the reporting and all the additional features from the management level that we're facing. So, with technology, we've definitely embraced some of the collaborative software that's available out there. And with that, we found new ways by creating sites, forms, anything that we can actually go ahead and try and quickly provide information and spread information across the organization. We've embraced some of the SaaS-based products that we have to try and communicate, as quickly as possible, and provide information, trying to pick up shifts, things where we're trying to fill holes that we had possible gaps within operations. We were utilizing whatever means in terms of communication technology that we could to try and pick up pace there. I'm trying to go about doing this without saying company names and information, so it's kind of to do. But for the most part, right, we were embracing the technologies that we had to try and fill those holes. Is probably the best way I can put it. That was our norm as we moved forward.
Okay, so Zarek, I'm going to put you on the spot as the last open question of our board discussion. Then we are going to open up the mic for everyone, so that you can go open up mic and your cameras so that you can go ahead and participate in the discussion as well. Zarek, you mentioned a number of things in your background, and one of them, you were talking about data. And you were talking about digital transformation, which, by the way, I do think is one of the key terms right now. If you walk through a trade show, if we had one right now, it would probably be digital transformation up above the head on the aisles. But with all this and with all this new data and all this non-touch and everything else, becomes additional data security issues and fraud. And I'm sort of wondering if this has also opened up things that you never thought of or saw before, that you and your franchisees are dealing with as well.
Sure. And my apologies for the mic issues if folks are hearing them. I can't hear them, but I've gotten notes that they're there. Yes, it has, but I believe with chip and pin, most of the fraud shifted to e-commerce, right? There was always card present fraud in store, and chip and pin came, so much more of that fraud went to e-commerce. Now with all these off-premise channels, they're functioning new e-commerce channels. As you get more revenue there, you're going to get more corresponding fraud. And I always say, if you build a better mousetrap, they'll simply build a better mouse. I do look at the sites and look at what's coming and try to secure our entire payment landscape against all of it, but it's ever changing. The franchisees experience more. I think Sarah probably gets more of it. The more transient populations or travel populations you get, the more fraud, right? That's where we find our fraud to be centered, is the travel hubs and where there's New York, big cities where there's a large transient population. So we combat it there where we can. But yes, Rob, we have seen a corresponding uptick in fraud as more and more of our sales come from off-premise and these sort of omni-channel shift that's happening across the industry, where you'll take a sale from almost anywhere, provided it aligns with the goals of the business. So yes.
Great. Well,
Correct.
listen.
If Amazon can, if Microsoft can be compromised, nobody is safe.
Well, listen, with that, let's go ahead and shift to open mic. So I would encourage those who are attending to open up your mics and turn on your video, just like we're sitting across the table. And I'm sorry, we can't be right now. And we see some old friends there. And I know some people.
There was one question in the chat as well.
Yes, that is true. There was a question about opening up dining rooms and whether people have noticed a reduction in the delivery carryout curbside sales, or have sales in those areas stayed strong while adding to dining sales on top of it. And by the way, I would just add to that, creating a new day part or a new revenue stream going forward without decrementing what was the traditional business. So anybody, please feel free to add a comment to that, including our questionnaire, Doug, if you want to do that, but I'm sure we have many experiences on this call.
If you want me to start, we're in almost every market. Some markets were fully shut down. Some markets really never closed, right? So we've seen all the spectrum of the types of closings and COVID impact. We are starting to see things reopen. In most cases, I'd say it's just been new incremental business. We have not seen the shift from dine-in. In talking to other folks, they have. I talked to someone up in Michigan who they said they've seen a direct drop between their off-premise business as dine-in starts to open back up, and they were hoping that trend won't continue. I don't think we've seen that, but I think it's too early. The openings or reopenings, call it what you want to call it, are just starting. So I think it's too early to tell what's going to be permanent. I think most folks are hopeful that some portion of that off-premise business will remain once their restaurants are fully open and dining rooms are fully open. I think that's very much going to be the case, right? And there'll be a honeymoon period to some degree after the reopenings before things normalize, right? Probably 12 to 18 months before you know what it's really going to look like. So.
Well, I'm sure that some people on this call, we did a webinar a few months ago where people were talking about how they were known as a breakfast company and yet they had to deliver. And I think people might have been surprised to discover that you actually could deliver and maintain quality and things. And sure, some things had to shift. I don't know the experience, of some of you on this call, but, does it create the additional revenue stream you believe you're going to keep, after this is over? People come back in, but now you're still increasing their frequency?
We can only reflect on some of the numbers that we are seeing from the Grabs and the Uber Eats of the world. They are not only seeing the uptick to continue to be there, which means tapping into new revenue, reaching more customers, because in this pandemic, people have gotten used to using some of these tools in the past that they were not used to. So with that use, the convenience factor is there to stay, and these delivery platforms have made it very desirable, very easy, and very inexpensive, looking at the convenience that they have to offer. So all of these delivery providers are continuing to project that these are going to be incremental revenues even after the full dining operations are open.
Right. Doug, did you want to add to that?
I wanted to leapfrog on what Sarah said. We noticed that during the deepest, worst part of the pandemic, we'd seen a real major uptick in online sales, both through our app as well as through the web. I'm talking about, we had maxed out with an amazing month, have nearly 650,000 in sales from 32 pizza restaurant locations. Currently this year, we have not gone under $1 million a month from those same 32 locations. So we've seen a major uptick. I mean, 600 to 1.2 million is not anything to sneeze at. And we just recently, with the mandates coming here in Illinois, they've opened up our restaurants from 25 to 50%. We noticed the dining rooms open. Our biggest fear was all the revenue we've seen happen within the web area and all the delivery, carry out, and curbside we've offered. What will happen to those sales? And remarkably, those sales have stayed strong, haven't slumped at all, and the dining rooms are adding on to it. So it's kind of a plus for us. We've seen some actual same-store sales increases instead of decreases, which is amazing with all that we've dealt with in the pandemic.
George, did you want to add to that? Nice to see you. I haven't seen you in years.
I know, it was great seeing you too. You haven't changed. What I wanted to ask Doug right there was simply, have you done a cost analysis on that, and have those incremental sales, are they actually profitable? Because you are paying a big margin to those delivery companies. That was it.
I'm sure Doug may have an answer to that. I'm sure a few other people may have something to say about that as well.
I can give you an answer to that. We have a delivery fleet. It's beautiful cars, all decked out. In fact, we're replacing the fleet right now. Sorry, Ford, you stopped making the Focus, so we stopped using it. We've switched over and are going with the beautiful Nissan Sentras, and they're decked out with our advertising Monocle's Pizza on the side. And we have not seen, I mean, we saw an incremental increase. Yeah, you've got greater cost in boxing and paper goods, etc. But overall, we've maintained a very strong profitability, even with the increased cost of labor that we had in regards to that. The company's been very profitable, and in fact, I know so because my last few bonus checks have been very nice, which normally January, February, March, that's a slump time for the restaurant industry, and it hasn't been so, which is amazing in this time.
I would say, from where we sit, casual, full dining. I mean, like everybody else, we saw a huge increase in the shift to off-premise, online ordering, delivery service platforms, the whole 9 yards. As dining rooms reopen, we are starting to see a little bit of downward pressure on those off-premise sales, because quite honestly, I think people who want to socialize and dine out, if they have the choice, they're going to start making that choice. So I don't know, Doug, if maybe it's different based on segment. I don't know, but we're not experiencing what you're experiencing. There is some trade-off between going back into the restaurants and a slight reduction in off-premise sales.
I will add that in talking to a brand here in the DC market, in 2 markets, there are a fine dining restaurant concept, and they never offered carryout. They wouldn't, right? It was against their brand. It's high-end food, customer experience, a great experience, great food, great drinks, you name it. And when COVID hit, they had to pivot, and they were worried about, I talked to the IT guy, someone buying a $50 steak, having it delivered, right? But people did, right? It worked. They survived. They're still here, and they had a thriving carryout model and executed very well. The question is, are they going to keep it once they are fully opened back up and don't need it anymore, right? I think to Doug's point, have they gotten accustomed to some of that revenue? Will some portion of that still be there after they open up? Because it's against their branding experience to do it to begin with.
And what do they think? Do they think they're going to keep it?
They're not sure. They were non-committal on the answer to that question.
If I can chime in, we're very similar to what Zarek just stated, and we have a concept store in the city. Gibson's had the same situation, right? We're a full steakhouse. It's a $75 steak that you buy, and we didn't think it would be a to-go type setup. It became a parking lot. We had cars wrapped around the corner in order to pick up their food. They all wanted their steaks, their natural orders. We had our repeat customers come back. So as the dining room started to open up, we were scared that there might be a downtick in terms of the to-go and delivery services. Of course, during the beginning stages, there was this huge boom and everyone went crazy, but after a while it started to taper off. We found that we're pretty much staying in that $125,000 a month range currently right now for that one location that's doing offsite. So we have not really seen too much downtick. We found that the business is a new business model that we didn't think would be profitable. And it is now something that we're probably trying to gear up and add more POS terminals, more technology to kind of build a to-go pickup location for us. So for us, we're finding a benefit, much like Doug, and it's not tapering off. I should say it's pretty much staying on average of where we're at. We'll see where once we get to 100%, but we feel that it's going to be a new revenue driving stream for us long term.
Are any of you concerned that that you may not get your customers back in the store when things reopen?
I'd say no. You know, we have customers driving from, you know, there's different counties where counties border one another. They'll drive from a county with a closed store to an open store because they want that experience. I think folks are starving for interaction and people. So I think for most, that's not going to be an issue. It's really what are you going to have for off-premise sales post reopening, but I don't think the customers come back to the restaurants are going to be an issue, especially with the fact that roughly 16% of them closed, I believe, right? So I don't think that's going to be a concern.
I would agree. As a matter of fact, we're projecting probably June, July, August to be a real boom quarter. And our biggest concern is not having enough staff to actually service the demand because we've lost so much staff to other industries who just either opted out because they couldn't deal with the volatility or the risk, and now they're working in other industries and they're probably not going to come back.
Hey, Rob.
Yep.
That just what Lou said reminded me, we've had a number of employees. We did not actually lay anybody off or let anybody go. But we had a number of employees who opted to quit and take unemployment and didn't want to work because they felt the unemployment was more than enough money and they didn't have to work. Has that impacted anyone else? Have you felt that? And what do you see that as one of those things that's ongoing now with the latest round of COVID relief that the Congress has passed?
Yeah, by the way, what a great question that is, because I remember what a great comment, Doug, because when we started COVID, that kept coming up and coming up and coming up in the beginning months. I haven't heard that discussion in ages. So,
oh, it's definitely real.
No, it's definitely a very much an issue. And even with the new stimulus checks going on, I mean, people, especially hourly employees, you know, they'll stay home for a little bit because that's in certain situations helping them more than putting in the hours. I also think that a lot of companies, it was easier scaling down, ramping it back up, considering how quickly we are expecting things to come back up. That's going to be a challenge. It's going to be, you know, potential to impact sales, potential to really, you know, use the opportunity. So those companies that are really ready to ramp up are going to be okay, but it's hard. I mean, we are facing working in airports as is difficult. Finding staff that we've lost, bringing them back in is even worse.
and the last thing you want is a bad first impression when they come back of poor service.
That's right.
And that speaks specifically to now the new processes, new training, new protocols, and all that. So that's really, really important to make sure you guys are on top of that too.
Is there any, go ahead. Is there any technology tools, that we think are going to help that may not have been as important before, but are important now? And also, I'm always curious as to, you know, there used to be presentations on what's hot, what's not, but what you do believe are the hot things for you now coming out of this that are just going to change your customers' and employees' lives.
Hey, Rob, I'd like to address that in terms of technology. Learning management systems, LMS. We had been working with and adopting a training program to instruct and teach our assistant management and doing a management training course. We modified that and immediately started rolling together online courses for food safety and safety practice and IDPH, COVID, how to manage it in a real way, and all the rules and regulations. We're supposed to be sanitation trained every 3 to 6 months instead of every year. And all these things have increased the number of times we need to train. And yet with COVID, we didn't want people coming together in groups. So we've adopted an LMS training program that has really taken off. And we've actually trained all of our employees as well as our office staff. That's where we practice and tested the equipment. And it's become a real use of the technology. So we're actually placing tablets in the store so they can do their training on a tablet, sitting in a break room, so that we can keep everyone up to date and with any changes and whatnot that come, especially with as fast as things are evolving within the whole pandemic.
Well, I think that first of all, you're going to wrap us up there, Doug. You asked the first question, you got the last comment in there. And I wish we really had more time, but actually, you know, this is what it's about, and we do have more time coming up, actually. So first of all, these virtual discussions are going to continue, so we can continue these questions and we can continue discussion on other ones as well. On Thursday, March 18th, just in next week, at 2 p.m., we're going to have the second one, and then on Thursday, March 25th, we'll have the third one. So we really do get the opportunity 3 weeks in a row to continue this discussion and think of things, but also actually to follow what's going on, because things seem to be changing every day. Industry conferences are starting to come back. At least they're being announced that they're coming back. And so the IFBTA will be participating in the International Restaurant Food Service Show in New York in July, at this time in July. Western Food Service in Anaheim in August, and then Florida in Orlando, but also FS Tech in Texas. I'm not a betting person on which ones of these, but I'm going to guess at least Florida and Texas will happen. And we'll see about California and New York. I think that, you know, they certainly are on the schedule, and we intend to be out there as the IFBTA participating in it. So next week, we have 3 other board members that will be joining us on this call. And you saw our total roster, but we'll have Don, Karen, and Kathy giving, again, different perspectives, because they each come from different areas of the industry. And if you need further information on this, and also this recording is going to be posted, it'll be at ifbta.org. And with that, I'd like to thank our board member, my boss's panel today, and all of you for attending. It's a lively discussion. We need to continue those discussions until we can meet again in person, which I hope will be very soon. And I want to thank everyone for attending. And again, you can find more information at ifbta.org. And watch out for some big announcements coming up from us, because you can see from our recap before, there's a lot of things going on. So thank you very much to our panel today. And thank you everyone for the open mic. And we will see you again next week.